Welcome to Speaking of Crypto with your host, Shannon Grinnell.
Thank you to Ledden, Stark, and Lolly for sponsoring the show. Well, thanks, Connie. I'm so appreciative of having you here on the podcast today.
Likewise, I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about your projects here. So I wanted to start with BitGive. I've really been hearing a lot about how blockchain technology can be so great for nonprofits. So maybe you can tell me what inspired you in the first place and how the technology is helping.
Absolutely. Well, I'm really glad that you're hearing that a lot. That's encouraging.
I guess from the circles that I'm in.
It's great. It's great. So we started working on this over 6 years ago now. So BitGive was founded in 2013. And what inspired me originally was my previous career was in environmental work. And I worked a lot with nonprofits. And a lot of it was focused on finding them funding for the important work they were doing. And I knew about Bitcoin and the technology, but when I really got super excited about it was I went to the first Bitcoin focused conference was in San Jose in 2013.
I've heard a lot about it. I think it was a big deal.
And it was, the energy was just amazing. I was there because my brother's company had just gotten its first seed round, and I didn't really have the intention of, a professional career in Bitcoin. I just went to the event.
And your brother founded, it was BitPay, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. He's the co-founder of BitPay.
It's amazing.
And they started in 2011, I believe, but 2013 was when they first got a seed round and they were hiring and just really taking off. And that event in San Jose was just like that for the whole industry. It was like this, was just starting to bud and maybe, blossom a little bit as an industry. And the energy really got me. It was full of entrepreneurs, Silicon Valley investors, developers. And it really, at that point for me, it became clear how big it could be, what the potential really was. And I immediately thought, what can this industry do for philanthropy? If it's going to be huge, if it's going to be like the next .com boom or even bigger, how do we make sure that we support social causes and we leverage this opportunity for social impact? And I got really excited because of the potential is global, right? I mean, the scale of what you could do could really move the needle on issues instead of, a lot of what we do in today's day and day in philanthropy is we're chipping away at issues, but we're not able to really move the needle. So
yeah, I've heard a lot about the last mile problem and how it just seems to be like you can get some momentum and then getting things actually done and completed can be really difficult.
Yeah, even without crypto or blockchain or any of that, it's so hard. And these issues are so big on a global scale that how do you fix them? It's very daunting. But I really felt like the potential of this industry held, the opportunity to maybe really move the needle on issues. So that's what the initial idea of BitGive was to have a philanthropic institution for the industry.
And I guess I'm wondering, was your way in Bitcoin? Like, was it Bitcoin itself because you saw it as borderless and, this international new type of currency that could be frictionless? Or was it the technology of blockchain that initially inspired you?
Well, it was Bitcoin really, because back then there was no hype about blockchain yet. There weren't private blockchains. Ethereum wasn't even an idea. And so it was really about that, the magic of peer-to-peer moving funds. For me, what excited me was that potential meant I could reach anyone in like remote areas of the world with the most need immediately with funding, and it just was so inspiring. And then when I got into understanding it better, even with just thinking about Bitcoin, you can save so much money by reduce fees. You can get it there so much faster. you know that it got to the person you intended to because it's cryptographically secured. They have the only private keys, right? So just that alone was mind-boggling, right? And then it evolved into understanding the transparency opportunity around blockchain, smart contracts, and things like that as years passed. But in 2013, nobody was
looking forward to that yet, right?
Yeah.
So as it's grown and changed, how would you say that your initial vision has sort of grown along with the technology? Are you trying to implement more of the transparency of blockchain, or how have you grown, and how has the company grown, or is it a foundation?
Yes, it's a foundation. Mm-hmm. It's a 501c3. So in the US, that's a tax-exempt nonprofit for charity. So yeah, we've grown a lot, I would say. In the early days, it was, and it still is to a degree, but it was mostly in the early days about outreach and education to NGOs about what is Bitcoin, why should they care, what are the benefits to nonprofit work. And one at a time, we would work with them because we didn't have a big team or the resources either. So we would choose one, we'd really, help them kind of learn up on all of it, get comfortable with the tech, fundraise in Bitcoin. And we'd focus on that project for a couple months sometimes. Some of them were much smaller, like at an event or something, but most of them were a couple months long, substantial campaigns. And as we grew and as the industry grew, then we were able to take on more, not just talking to them about Bitcoin and fundraising, which I call the gateway. It's like the gateway is, they get excited when it's a new source of funding or a new audience that they can appeal to. But there's so much more to it than that, right? So as we evolved, we started working on GiveTrack. And GiveTrack brings all of that together into one platform. It allows us to scale so we can do multiple projects at a time. But it also focuses on that more mature aspect of the tech, which is the blockchain for transparency piece. It's still a long way to go because the technology itself allows for us to do that, and GiveTrack is built to do that today. But the real world isn't really, there's no functioning ecosystem in which we can say nonprofits could use Bitcoin or cryptocurrency all the way at that last mile, like you mentioned. It's not quite there yet, but the tech allows us, once they're able to use it on the ground, to track it all the way there. So it's possible today, but it's not feasible, I guess is a great way to put it.
Yeah, so the technology is there, but it's not feasible, you're saying, because companies or foundations like the Red Cross or UNICEF or United Way, they just don't have the infrastructure to be able to all of a sudden implement like blockchain or Bitcoin into their financial transactions. Is that what it is?
Well, that's the other side of it. Yeah, I mean, so the initial piece is just that as an industry, we haven't built out a functioning ecosystem, really. They can't, if I have a project with an NGO in Kenya or Ethiopia, we have one there right now, they can't use Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency in Ethiopia on the ground to implement a project. Right.
Because they can't actually transact in crypto. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Right. There isn't a functioning ecosystem with merchants and products and services that would accept cryptocurrency yet.
Right.
The other side of it, though, is what you're saying is another point. For the much larger NGOs, it's more of like a pilot stage for them. They can't just implement it across the board with all their projects and programs and services. It's not quite mature enough for that, I don't think, and it's a huge undertaking for an institution of that size. So they're at more of a pilot stage where if they are interested in the tech itself beyond a fundraising aspect, then they're trying it out and they're seeing where they can make it work and they're testing it and learning and things like that. So it is happening, but it's not happening, integrated throughout the entire organization.
Yeah. So, what would you say are the advantages? So, you mentioned some. Maybe we can just go back to those in terms of using Bitcoin as this fundraising mechanism, and then actually using it to, to facilitate these transactions through a nonprofit. What are the biggest advantages?
The biggest advantages, well, to me, I find that like the gateway aspect is just a simple thing, right? Fundraising in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where most NGOs are right now because they're comfortable at least with that.
Right.
But to me, the beauty comes along when you're able to actually use the network, right? When you can move those funds to, from a developed country, or they're usually raising money in developed countries, but they're sending it to developing economies and countries for projects. When they can leverage the network to actually move funds globally and reduce the time that it takes to get there, the fees, right? Because you can send it almost instantly, and fees are, depending on the services that you use, you could limit it all the way down to just the blockchain, network fee. Right. So sometimes you have other fees along the way, but compared to the traditional systems, it's a huge, huge change. And then the security of knowing that it actually got there and to the person you intended it to get to, and that confirmation. Surprisingly, we don't actually have most of those things in the traditional systems that we use today. So I think that is the next step beyond just fundraising in crypto and like the headlines and the excitement around that easy kind of a gateway aspect. And ultimately, to me, there's so much opportunity around the transparency piece. It's not just for accountability, but to actually be capturing data in real time and be able to see what's happening as it's happening and make changes, right?
I think not only, it's a win-win for everybody, but it's also great, I think, for a donor to be able to see, I think it'd be very rewarding to see exactly where your money went to and how it was actually helpful. Isn't that what we want, right now in the first place?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what we've built with GiveTrack. It's intended to do that with crypto, but we have built it in a way that it also allows for that to be done with fiat, so that when they have to convert it, because that's just the reality of today, that they're still able to report back on that. They can show the blockchain transaction of, hey, first of all, you can see everyone's donation going into a wallet that's owned by the charity. So you can confirm that they received it and not someone else. Right. You can also confirm that they received 100% of it, right? And that 30% of it wasn't siphoned off for fees or something. And then even if we can only show that it went from there to an exchange, that's still a huge change or benefit or improvement from today's systems, that you could see that as a donor happening in real time. And then it goes to an exchange, and then we have it built into our system that they can still be very accountable and transparent about what they did with the fiat once it was exchanged, because we know that that's more of a reality in today's world. But the system itself is intended to follow it in crypto as far as you can.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Do you think, just to play devil's advocate, do you think Bitcoin is too technical for most donors? Like in today's sort of, it's still not mainstream. So why have you chosen to sort of target accepting Bitcoin in terms of your donations?
Well, a couple things. So we do accept fiat as well. So we're not, just only crypto. And also, I think, we've talked about a lot of the challenges on the last mile or on the NGO side, but there are other challenges in the ecosystem around on-ramps for people like donors, which would be your mainstream user. It's definitely still very challenging for someone to get involved, buy some, whatever. There's a lot of, I would say, friction in the process. Most of it is around regulatory issues like, oh, you want to buy some Bitcoin? Well, you have to, jump through all these hoops for the regulatory agencies so that we know you're not, a terrorist or money laundering or something.
Yeah. And I think also if you're not working in American dollars, I'm based in Canada. So the first time I bought Bitcoin, and it was through an exchange, it was through Kraken, but I had to wire my money to Japan in order to get it back to my own account. So no, it isn't the easiest, even when people are excited and, wanting to try it out.
Yeah, it is really challenging. And I think the areas that the industry really needs to focus more on are the on-ramps and off-ramps, because otherwise you don't really have, it's very hard to demonstrate the use case of the tech itself and really show the beauty of it if people can't get in and can't get out. That's definitely challenging. But I'd say, to the other part of your question as to why we're targeting mainstream, but we're also targeting the cryptocurrency community. But I think in both cases, the beauty of what we're doing is demonstrating a real use case, right? So for the mainstream audience, something like being able to watch your money go directly to the charity, how much does or does not get taken away for fees, and then what exactly they did with it, all in real time and on an open public ledger that you can trust. That's why we also work on the Bitcoin network, because it's not a private blockchain. So you really can count on it being accountable and transparent, right? Nobody can tamper with it. So that piece, I think, is a really exciting use case for the tech for a mainstream user, in the philanthropy lens of donations. And then from the cryptocurrency angle, I think it's also of benefit to them to have real use cases that they can demonstrate what the technology has the potential for, beyond speculation, right? Because then what is speculating on if you can't show what the beauty of the tech is? Right?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's, win-win for both of those aspects. I heard about the fact that you can donate through Amazon Smile. So I was wondering if you could kind of explain how that works, because it seems like a fun way in.
Yeah, it is. It's a little confusing because they have an Amazon Smile platform, which is separate from the normal Amazon platform. But it looks exactly the same, and I'm not sure why it's not integrated. But essentially what you can do is you can sign up on Amazon Smile, and then anytime you want to shop on Amazon, you just go to Amazon Smile instead. And actually it'll remind you, once you've signed up for Amazon Smile, if you go to Amazon, it'll remind you, hey, go over to Smile. And what you do is you sign up for a charity, which of course we're biased to you choosing BitGive. Any charity on their platform. And as you make purchases, they donate 0.5% of your purchase towards that charity. So for us, we would get the 0.5%. And each quarter, they lump sum all of the donations into a quarterly contribution that we receive. And you can change the charity as a user on Smile. So if you wanted to, for May for breast cancer month, you could change it to something else, and it's very flexible in that sense. So it's pretty easy to use once you sign up.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a great idea. I would say I know a lot of people are shopping through Lolly nowadays and getting Bitcoin back. But especially as a Canadian, there's only so much Lolly shopping I can do, because otherwise I get paid extra in shipping and it just doesn't sort of work. But I do a lot of shopping on Amazon. And so I love it. I'm for sure going to switch my, use that Amazon Smile, and because it's so easy, I don't really have to do anything extra. And yet that extra little piece will go to you guys, which I just love.
It's not out of pocket for you at all. It's they're doing it on top of, so it doesn't come out of your contribution. So.
Yeah, I wish it was more widely advertised or even known about it. I didn't know about it until I heard an interview with you. I don't know. Do they advertise at all Amazon Smile? I mean, it's such a great thing.
I don't think they do a whole lot. They kind of they provide resources for the nonprofits to use to promote it themselves. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I don't think they're doing much. And I guess it's, to a degree, I can understand it's out of pocket for them. So they're kind of, putting the promotional burden onto the nonprofits. Yeah. But yeah.
It's still super cool. I just love it. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Back to Bitcoin. Why don't you think we have mass adoption of Bitcoin yet? What's the hold up?
Oh, that's a great question. I've been watching this industry evolve for a long time, since almost the beginning, really.
Yeah.
I mean, there was not much going on before 2013. And it's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of speculatory activity, a lot around how different countries are looking at it, choosing to regulate it or not regulate it, whether they're welcoming or not, and a lot of speculation around the price based on a lot of those things, and a lot of headlines about, not always positive things. So I think there's still so much, I guess I would wrap all that up to say there's still so much misinformation, and there's still so much confusion at the mainstream level, right? When they hear about it, that's the stuff they hear about. They hear about the hacks, the scams, the, regulatory issues. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? How can we trust this if we don't know who it is behind it? And so from a mainstream perspective, if you're not, inclined to dig further and really look into it, if that's all you're hearing, and then you try to go use it and you have all these other hoops to jump through, it could be very discouraging, and I think a lot of people step back and say, I'm going to watch and see what happens here. And then it takes that much longer, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think, though, it's definitely started to change over the last 2 years or so. There was obviously when the price went up, there was this huge, growth in interest, and the community grew exponentially. Then it shrank back down when the price went back down again.
Right.
But that did help, I think, expand exposure, knowledge, attention, interests. And in 2016, even before all that, was when a lot of Fortune 500s and banks and all of those guys started to come in, even if it was just on like an R&D perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So you're definitely seeing a lot of growth and change, but from a mainstream user's angle, I think it's still very, there's still a lot of misinformation,
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And with Facebook's Libra project, some people who are still just hearing and don't know too much about Bitcoin are even confusing what's going on with Libra and versus Bitcoin. What do you think about the Libra project?
Well, I've been following it sort of just on the periphery because obviously I'm got a lot going on, but also because I see that they've gotten a lot of pushback, and they have a lot of questions to answer. A lot of people that aren't happy with it before it can really go anywhere. They have a lot to do. Yeah. So I haven't really, paid attention to it in details, but I think that, their approach is definitely, it's fair to receive a lot of criticisms and questions around their approach since it is so corporate focused. I think it's good that that's highlighted in, the conversations that are having in Congress, and probably with the press as well, that it's distinguishing the difference between a corporate created coin and network.
Yeah, very centralized versus
servers, the servers are going to be held by all these corporations. They're starting to understand the difference between something like that and Bitcoin, which I think is beautiful. So in that sense, I think, it's grown the knowledge and understanding and the nuances of decentralized systems. And it's brought a lot more exposure because they're huge. I mean, they're in the limelight, they're Facebook, they have billions of users. Everyone's now suddenly paying attention. And maybe even seeing cryptocurrency as something more mainstream if Facebook is taking a look at it. So in the end, I think it'll probably benefit Bitcoin, really. But, we'll see. We'll see how they jump through all the hoops and answer all these questions they've been posed. I mean, they definitely have a mountain of
yeah, regulatory framework, to wade through. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I think it's, wait and see. Who knows what's going to come of it? But it seems like it can't be anything but beneficial for Bitcoin, at least in the long run. But, I guess time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope that ultimately the concerns that are being raised are addressed, because then it shouldn't be so corporate controlled in the end if they do roll something out.
Yeah, interesting. Like it'll be interesting to see what the biggest holdups will be, and if they're able to, I guess, change enough so that they can be accepted as well. And the other thing is, I don't think it's just in the US, right? It's going to be international. So it's not just, Congress that has to say okay to, the direction they're going. It's also, the EU and around the world. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's, I think, the most interesting piece of it all for me, is to just watch and, from the sidelines and hear everybody's perspectives and see how they're responding to it and the questions they're asking. It's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
What's been the most challenging thing, or the challenging time, would you say, Connie, in the lifespan of this project for you? And how were you able to overcome it?
So this company, I guess you could say, the nonprofit itself and the whole journey has been a challenge. I don't think I could pinpoint any particular thing. I mean, it's been, as a pioneer in the industry, it's been a roller coaster ride from day one, all the ups and downs of this, Wild West, innovative tech, innovative industry, global perspectives, everything constantly changing, like the ground beneath you is never stable. And on top of that, being an entrepreneur and having that roller coaster ride that any entrepreneur is on, regardless of industry, right? It's
absolutely.
It's always a roller coaster ride with starting something from scratch. I think we as a nonprofit also faced unique challenges in comparison to like a startup doing a for-profit with investment rounds and things like that. We've really tried to maintain and sustain an organization through all of these changes in a nonprofit framework, which is really challenging to do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I think, it's all been challenging and rewarding. And I don't know that I could say there's any particular thing. It's relative, really, because, in the early days, it was about, can we get this off the ground? Are we going to get the C3 status? How do we fund it to, make it happen in the long run? Then it evolved into, how do we get the donors and the NGOs to keep coming and stay interested? How do we build, GiveTrack was, maybe that was the biggest challenge. I mean, building a tech platform on Bitcoin and blockchain when there's very limited resources as far as developers go, being able to find money to pay them as a nonprofit and be competitive with the for-profits that can pay them a lot more. And then just the challenge itself of building on Bitcoin and blockchain, is they're changing. It's changing all the time. What's available, what's not available, why, all those things. And so just to get a platform built and launched and functioning, we first had an MVP and now we have a version 1.0. Huge undertakings. So I think it's relative to the time along the last 6 or so years, but lots of challenges and lots of rewards too. I mean, it's been awesome. So
yeah, so maybe just if you could pick one, if it's with GiveTrack, let's say, like what was it that sort of pulled you through to get you to the point where you could have this version 1.0? Was there anything that you sort of held on to and just thought, I can do it because, or I don't know.
There's something from day one when I had this this vision of BitGive, it really came out of nowhere. There's something inside of me that always keeps me going with that initial vision. And I'm just so passionate about it, and I'm so committed to it. Even when I'm in the weeds, it's taken us a long time to kind of chip away at how do we demonstrate one step at a time this big vision that, we're ultimately working towards. And I know it's possible, it's not impossible. And so I guess I just, I like the challenge of like, what's next and how do we break through that? And I'm also very lucky to have, I think, a lot of support in many directions, because we got involved really early on, and a lot of people love what we're trying to do. I have a lot of support from board members, advisors, donors, you name it. People I can call up and say, oh my gosh, we're up against this KYC issue again. Like, can you help me? And somehow it all sort of comes together, but I have to acknowledge that it's a lot of people all over the world, really, that are coming together to make it happen. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you say you're building this tech to sort of prove the use case of it. Are you at a point where, let's say, another early nonprofit who's just got an idea, really, could they come to you and purchase the tech that you've created in order to help make their own giving, like donations to implementation, to make that transparent?
Yeah, we're working on what we call a white label version of GiveTrack, and we're still trying to decide exactly how we would package that, because ultimately what my goal is I'd love to have all the data flowing through a central point anyway. So even if we white labeled it, I'd like it to still be basically on our servers so that we have a single set of data. And ultimately, in the long run, what I'd like to have is a global dashboard where you're seeing everything happening in real time. So the money flowing, but also be able to use that data, right? Like feedback loops, amazing. What's happening, capturing compromised parties and pathways, looking at efficiencies and effectiveness, in real time instead of after the fact, and that kind of stuff. So if we had, everyone's data flowing to a central point, but we were able to have NGOs basically make it look and feel like their own and be housed on their own URL or something like that. Right. That would be ideal.
Interesting.
So we're looking into how to make that happen so that we can ultimately still have all one data set as well.
Right. Yeah, fascinating. Now, how do you go about finding your donors?
Oh boy, any way we can. I think with a global organization and Bitcoin being global, a lot of it is online. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all that stuff. We have interviews like this, which is really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, if I want to give to like one of your specific projects, how would I go about doing that? I know through Amazon Smile, and then could I go directly?
Yeah, so GiveTrack is our platform. It's givetrack.org, and that's where the projects are. So you can actually look at what's fundraising. You can see the ones that are already under implementation or even completed. So you can see kind of the full, path of how the projects unfold. And then if you're interested in donating, we try to make it as simple as possible. So on the platform, there's two options. One is directly with Bitcoin, so it's assuming you already have Bitcoin, and that's really simple. And then the other is through Uphold. So that's how we're allowing people to come with fiat or lots of other different cryptocurrencies if they have them. We have a direct integration with Uphold. So you can, through Uphold, use credit card or other cryptocurrencies. The friction is that you do have to onboard with Uphold, right? But what's great is the platform itself is directly integrated with them. So anything you put in, it could be Ethereum, Litecoin, Euros, whatever. Uphold is automatically then converting that into Bitcoin and sending it to the charity's wallet on GiveTrack so that it's all in one currency, and then we can follow it from there.
So cool. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, and they have 50 different fiat and cryptocurrencies now. So
that's pretty incredible. Yeah, lots of options.
Yeah.
That's good. Connie, I'm going to ask you a bigger question. Why would you say you're doing the work that you're doing today?
Well, I'm very passionate about the potential for this. Like I said, my past career, I worked with nonprofits for 15 years. And, I mostly was really either strategizing with them or trying to get them funding, knowing that their work was so important. And when I was doing this in California, but when you look at it from a global perspective, most of the most important human needs and really environmental needs as well, we're relying on nonprofits to fulfill those needs.
That's a good point.
It's really not the best, not the best system for a society. But they hold this role, which is so critical, and they're in a position where they need the resources to really handle these major issues. And so for me, it's like, if we can get everybody working with this technology, it may take a long time, but ultimately, then you open up so many doors for NGOs. They can fundraise globally. They're not, constrained in really many ways. And then there's efficiencies and effectiveness, cost effectiveness, as well as just regular effectiveness in being able to transfer funds cheaper, faster, more securely.
Right.
And then ultimately that, improving where there's gaps in the system, where there's duplication of efforts, where there's compromised pathways, if we can use the tech to correct and improve all of those things, the ultimate goal really is that in the end, we make a more and real impact on the ground on real issues, instead of just chipping away at them and not really ever solving them, right? So it's an opportunity to improve across the board, the philanthropic sector, to be more effective, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Makes so much sense. Well, what are some of the projects that you're currently working with that are happening, let's say, today?
We have quite a few. So in the fundraising stage, we have several in Venezuela. I know a lot of people are familiar with what's going on there. It's really bad, and it's been going on for way too long. So we are working with an NGO that's on the ground there, and they have 3 different programs they're fundraising for on GiveTrack.
Awesome.
They're focused on orphans, hospitals, and abandoned pets.
Oh, amazing.
And then we also have a new project that's in Jamaica that's building a new skate park for low-income youth. And it's all about, giving them a healthy outlet to get them out of, the pathways that they otherwise could follow that wouldn't be nearly as healthy or positive. And then we have a number that are already under implementation now. It's 2 in Chile, which of course now Chile is unfortunately also having issues. But we have 2 NGOs that are implementing funds that they raised on GiveTrack. We have another in Afghanistan with Code to Inspire. They're a coding school for girls in Herat.
Awesome.
Which is really exciting. What else do we have? We have another one that we just closed for Bahamas relief effort for the hurricane.
Great.
And we have a smaller one that's completed that was a food kitchen project in Buenos Aires. So that one was real quick, and they've already got all the results and everything. So
what were they looking to do, and what did they accomplish?
They had a really quick, essentially fundraiser around Bitcoin Pizza Day.
Oh, great!
So it was a short campaign. They raised enough funding to have several different meals at local kitchens in Buenos Aires, and they purchased extra supplies as well to leave behind for them to have more in the future.
Nice.
So they, I think they did at least 2 kitchens, but I want to say there's a third. Where they went and purchased all the materials, brought them to the kitchen, and actually prepared meals, and then left additional supplies for later.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was
very cool. Very cool. Connie, is there anything we didn't get to that you wanted to share with us? Otherwise, we've got 5 fun questions for you.
Okay. Well, I would just say we have some improvements coming to GiveTrack. So to keep an eye on things, we're working on a whole new user design. So we'll roll that out hopefully later this year, but also new improvements on how to make the reporting easier and more smooth for our NGOs, as well as a better wallet solution for the platform.
Fantastic.
So we have a lot of stuff that we're working on that hasn't quite been published yet. So
yeah. Oh, I mean, it looks great already. So I can see, improvements that'll just make it more fun and sort of easy to use, and I guess nicer to look at.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah.
So 5 fun questions. The first one being, if you could swap jobs with anyone for a day, whose job would you want to try out?
Oh, no question. I would want to be an astronaut.
Awesome.
Yeah. I always, since I was a child, wanted to see the whole Earth in front of me out in space.
So cool.
And that was just my childhood perspective on it. But yeah, it's
be amazing.
Yeah.
I read somewhere, it was like in a National Geographic kids book, that kids these days will, at some point in their lifetime, everyone will sort of go to space. And one of the ideas was even an elevator. That's like this crazy giant elevator that just goes out of the atmosphere or something, where you could look back, just like you're saying. So who knows what will happen, but it's pretty cool to think that, the next generation probably will have that perspective, like we can look down from an airplane.
Yeah. Wow.
Pretty neat.
That was incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. Number 2 is, if you could ask Satoshi one question, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think it's good that we don't know who it is. He, she, they. So if I were to be able to speak with them, I still wouldn't want to know who it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of the answers of why have been answered, or the questions of why have been answered. So knowing how brilliant this person is, I would want to ask them their perspective on how do we get to mainstream adoption.
Interesting.
Going forward, that brilliant mind, those brilliant minds, how do we get past this hump that we're trying to tackle? Yeah.
What if Satoshi is out there and has that answer, and yet we can't access it? The answer. Interesting. That's a great question. I love it.
Yeah.
Number 3 is, what's a book on Bitcoin that you would recommend?
Oh, I always recommend Andreas Antonopoulos's books. In my mind, he's obviously the top of the industry in education, and how he's very, very eloquent and very skilled and talented in how to explain the concept in a way that you can really understand it, but also be so inspired. And he's
unbelievable.
What's that?
It's unbelievable. He's just, you're right. He's very eloquent, but he has the best analogies to make something so clear. He's a master educator, no question.
Absolutely. Yeah. He makes it so relevant, and he has the ability to be much more technical for that audience. But I think the power of the way that he speaks and presents and writes is so eloquent and so relevant to a mainstream audience.
Oh, I totally agree. He's number 1 in my books as well. Number 4, if you could sum up your life so far into one moment, an event or place and time in your life, what would it be? If there's some pivotal, I don't know, really important moment for you.
Wow. That is a tough one. I think, a lot of people, talk about something like having children or things like that. I haven't had the opportunity to have those kinds of experiences yet. So a lot of what I think about as pivotal moments are my career, so the idea of BitGive would probably be a very pivotal moment, because I definitely didn't see it coming, and then it's become this whole thing. And also the places that it's taken me and the experiences that I've had it's hard to put them into words, right? But I've been to Kenya, South Africa, all over Latin America, and the people, the projects, the NGOs, being able to just see the network itself that Bitcoin and this industry has created on a global scale, it's the same sort of inspirational feeling in each of those moments, even though they're in very different places and contexts and different people. So I guess that, it's not necessarily one moment, but
yeah, it's the journey that it took you on, essentially.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do you follow any special diet, like meat only, like all of crypto Twitter, it seems, or keto or vegan?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that was a trend in crypto Twitter.
There's so much meat. I guess I also see it because I was vegan for so long and I'm vegetarian. So, the raw meat and steak and oh my gosh, it's so funny.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Most of what I see on crypto Twitter is like everyone arguing. So then I just leave. But
I have a hard time. I get really sensitive to it sometimes, like just around the negativity. Yeah.
It's really, I wish they would take that energy and put it into accomplishing things and working on the tech and positive stuff, because there's so much energy and potential, and it's all being channeled into this like weird sub thread of Twitter world.
Yeah, especially I find, it's Bitcoin versus Ethereum often, like those sort of two camps just infighting. But from the outside world, everyone thinks of crypto as the same bucket. And
yes.
Can't we all just get along? I knew you'd be one of those people who just wants people to get along.
Yeah, I feel like we'd be so much further along if all the talent in this industry was channeled better,
Yeah.
But to your diet question, I have a gluten intolerance. So, it's not really by choice that I...
No, but that's a tricky one. Nowadays, I guess it's a lot easier. So do you shop at health food stores then generally?
It's a little more mainstream now, which is great. And I largely just have cut out a lot of things that have gluten, but if I have that craving, I can find alternatives, which is really...
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, great.
Traveling, I gotta say. It's really hard with traveling, especially like airports and airplanes. It's like, they just don't get it. And then you're like, especially on an international flight, like I just went to South Africa and it's like 40 some hours of traveling. And if you can't get food, it's a challenge. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, Connie, it's been so great chatting with you. Appreciate you taking the time today. I'm sorry for not getting to you when we were trying much earlier.
Oh, no, that's okay. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I would say, like, as final words, we're entering the end of the year here, and there's a lot of thankfulness and giving coming up, but there's also the end of the tax season coming up. So I think we offer some opportunities in all those areas. If people are looking for a way to give back, looking for tax write-off or offsetting capital gains, you can donate in crypto to actually offset your gains, which I think is a very, very cool way to get around it. So
you offer tax receipts through tax receipts are no problem for you.
Yeah, we are in the US, so we can offer taxpayers in the US, but also on GiveTrack, there's different projects from different countries. So actually, I think the ones we have up right now are all C3s as well. So they would be geared towards US donors getting an offset or a write-off.
Right.
But yes, we issue a receipt, and then they can also go directly to the charity if it's not for us. It's if it's on GiveTrack, they can also ask them for more if they need it.
Great. Oh, it's fantastic. Well, Connie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm glad you're feeling better.
Thank you. Well, have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Speaking of Crypto with Shannon. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit speakingofcrypto.com and Facebook and Twitter at Speaking Crypto. We'll catch you next time.